What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So since that Nintendo Direct aired, we have all kinds of different reactions to that showcase, which includes confusion around a Switch 2 and Metroid Prime 4, as well as backlash around an Xbox port that just appears to be outright missing. So we're going to go over all of that stuff here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Sony, who is now skipping another event, this one coming up at the end of the summer. And then we also have another PS4 and Xbox One port, this of course being an Xbox Series and PS5 game porting backwards. Well, it looks like we're going to see that official announcement and release here pretty soon. So if you guys enjoy this video, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members of the channel do get Newswave early. If you'd like to learn more about that, click the join button down below this video. And we're going to start today with one of the games that was in that Direct, as we have some more information around who exactly is developing the game, and that being for Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. Now, we can see this posted up with Nintendo Life, where they say, according to some official documentation, which has already been spotted by many fans online, the Polish team Forever Entertainment SA, so they did Panzer Dragoon Remake, is helping out with the upcoming Switch release, with today marking the launch of the marketing campaign for the game. Of course, we still have to wait a few weeks into 2025 to check out how Donkey Kong Country Returns HD turns out, because there is some uncertainty, we'll say, around Forever Entertainment tackling this one. They haven't had the best track record, and Panzer Dragoon Remake had some issues, we'll say. House of the Dead Remake also had some issues. But, I mean, Nintendo, they invested in Forever Entertainment, partnered with them, essentially, and it seemed to be something like this that I guess they were planning out, getting games that already kind of have the groundwork laid. Like, it's not like Forever is remaking this game or anything. They're not changing up different aspects of the levels. They're adding the 3DS stuff in, but this is something I think is a bit more straightforward for them to develop and put out. So I guess we'll see how it turns out again into 2025. Also, if you did have Luigi's Mansion 2 HD pre-ordered with Walmart online, it appears they're going through a similar situation as what happened with something like Paper Mario, where pre-orders are just being canceled, seemingly with Nintendo only wanting them sold at retail stores, which this was pointed out here by Nintendo, saying that those pre-orders at Walmart have been canceled. Some people were posting up like the emails that were sent out, and it looks like they were just passing out gift cards or like $25 off your next eligible purchase over $45. Still appears to be up at Best Buy, GameStop, and Target. So I just wanted to bring this up in case you did have it pre-order there at Walmart, to double check your email to see if you got one of these. One, of course, you can use that discount on something else, but two, you can get your pre-order in for Luigi's Mansion 2 HD somewhere else. But something tells me I think this will be one that'll be fairly easy to walk into a store and find. I haven't seen as much of a demand for this game as opposed to a slew of other titles that have now been announced by Nintendo, but still, good game, and I think it would be worth picking up if you have not already experienced it, say, on the 3DS years ago. Oh, and while we will be talking about Sony skipping out on a big gaming event here a little later in the show, it does at least appear that many of the studios under Sony are, of course, working on games. We're just trying to figure out when exactly they're going to show them. But, for example, Bluepoint, which is one that I'm very curious what they're working on. Well, they gave us a bit more of an insight, reconfirmation as to what it is. We can see this posted up over on X. This is from Peter Dalton, who is the head of technology at Bluepoint Games, saying nothing has changed since our statement that we are working on an original title. Everything takes time. We are committed to sharpening our skills. Of course, they dipped out Demon's Souls alongside of the PS5's launch at the end of 2020. So at the end of this year, we will be 4 years removed from their last release. So I'm thinking we'll maybe hear from them before the end of the year at some sort of PlayStation showcase, although we've said that multiple times and we get like a state of play that ends up underwhelming. But eventually Sony's big first party studios have to start showing stuff, I assume. I mean, we're going to be 4 years into the generation, which we assume is the halfway point if it's going to run to maybe 2028. So yeah, we'll see what Bluepoint's working on. And to think that it's not necessarily going to be another remake and it's going to be something brand new, original for them is very, very interesting. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Metroid Prime 4 Beyond in that Nintendo Direct, as it clearly impressed a lot of people, because the big question coming out of that event was, did Nintendo just show us Switch 2 footage of a game without actually telling us that that's what they were showing? So a lot of people online were asking if Metroid Prime 4 Beyond it was running on the Switch too. In fact, it got to a position where IGN had this report that they posted saying, was Metroid Prime 4 running on Switch 2? Well, IGN did reach out to Digital Foundry and Richard Ledbetter there, just asking, since they are at Digital Foundry, they'll also take a look at a lot of these trailers and gameplay snippets that are posted up to try to at least come to a determination maybe around resolution and maybe the quality settings. I mean, it's hard to get that definitively from trailers for a number of reasons. One, it's going through generally crushed streaming or compression on these different platforms like YouTube, but also you get very selective bits of gameplay that are shown. They're not going to give you like the worst case scenario for the game running. Maybe a lot of stuff's happening on screen. You swing the camera just right and you get noticeable breakups and artifacts around enemies or parts of the screen. They're going to show you the best possible light for the game. So keep that in mind as they, of course, go through this. But this was from Richard Ledbetter at Digital Foundry when asked about this, saying, it's looking great and there are a couple of nice effects in there we took a closer look at, but ultimately, all the evidence points to this game running on the original Switch. The internal rendering resolution counts out at 900p, which is the same as Metroid Prime Remastered, and as good as it is, there are some aliasing issues and even some very minor frame rate drops. Everything about the visual makeup is consistent with a really well-made Switch game, where Retro has an excellent track record. I can imagine the development studio is really happy that people are making a connection with Switch 2, mind you. And yeah, I would assume so. I mean, if they're telling, if people are seeing this gameplay and they come away going, wow, that has to be on the Switch 2. There's no way that's running on the current Switch. Yeah, it's one of the best compliments you can give a studio like Retro, who is very, very good, at least historically, at getting a lot out of weaker hardware, right? I mean, look what it did with the GameCube way back in the early 2000s with Metroid Prime, and people are comparing that to like Halo and stuff, and it's impressive stuff then, and it continues to be impressive now since Metroid Prime Remastered is like the best looking game on the Switch. Just outright it is, and especially with the art style and in terms of like the technical stuff behind it is very impressive. But because I've played that, what I'm seeing with Metroid Prime 4 Beyond isn't necessarily blowing me away like it would if I had not seen Metroid Prime Remastered. That is a very, very impressive game on the Switch, and I feel like most people who have played that looked at Metroid Prime 4 Beyond and went, okay, yeah, it seems to be running on the Switch to me. It's very reminiscent of what I experienced then with that remaster. And it's pretty funny because there are video assets that you can access on Nintendo's website, and people found the link for Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, so it's not necessarily viewing through a stream on YouTube or YouTube like video on demand that still has crushed like quality and stuff. So it doesn't look as good as if you had just exported it maybe out of Premiere and then dropped it online in like Google Drive or Dropbox or something. Well, Nintendo's website does have that. People fired it up, and it's actually more telling than ever that it is closer to something with Metroid Prime Remastered, and I will leave that link down below so you can view it yourself and see what you think. But yeah, very impressive looking game. Not Switch 2 though, and it does make me wonder how sharp Nintendo's next system can make something like this appear, because I think this is a cross-gen game, and I think that is when it's really going to make people have like that aha moment of, okay, this combination of the Switch 2 and Retro Studios is pretty impressive. Next up, let's talk about Sony skipping Gamescom this year. Now, Gamescom happens towards the end of August from the 21st to the 25th. I believe on the 20th is when Jeff Keighley has like his opening night live that it's basically going to be very similar, or just about the same as what he did with Summer Game Fest, where they have a big show, 2 hours long or something. They just run a bunch of trailers and introduce new games and updates, and then they have all of Gamescom to do different demos and things on the floor where you have developers meet up with exhibitors, that sort of thing. And it seems that just Sony is not interested, and this shouldn't be too surprising really when you look at the big picture, but we can see this posted up, this by VGC, where they say the PlayStation maker has reportedly told German industry publication Games Workshop that it has no plans to exhibit at Gamescom this summer. I guess it's still possible that they could have something at opening night live, because they could just throw over a trailer. It's like, okay, now cut this in there and that's it. Maybe another push for Lego Horizon Adventures or Astrobot just ahead of release. But it doesn't seem like they're going to have any intention of going there and setting up a booth or talking to people face-to-face, maybe any more professional setting at Gamescom. But Sony really hasn't been there since 2019. I think it's been more than half a decade now, I believe. So it's to see this make the news is like, yeah, it's about right for Sony. And I think now more than ever, people are going to have that magnifying glass over them because they really haven't had that big showcase in a while, at least one that people came together and said, okay, that was just a really good showing. I know what's coming up for Sony. They've set up years and years of releases to look forward to. It's just been a very slow drip feed, if you want to call it that, for them. But I guess at least right now they have Lego Horizon Adventures coming up. They have Astro Bot. So there's some stuff in there, but it does make you wonder, okay, what exactly is their plan here? Because now we're on to what seems like a very common thing to think about is, okay, the next showcase, that's coming up, right? It's not just going to be a state of play that appears and underwhelms again. Well, I assume September is when their showcase would be, and I hope so, because I understand that these games are taking a long time to develop, just in general, and there were some setbacks because live service games were canceled. That's all out there. But I don't necessarily know if the strategy of doing one game a generation is the correct one, because it's only going to take longer to make games and it's only going to get more expensive. Sean Layden had an entire talk about how these different studios can work through this and figure it out. And a lot of it was make shorter games and leverage AI for a lot of the heavy lifting to try to get some of the more menial tasks done faster. And then these games can come out more rapidly. So I hope whatever they have to show is really good, because that might be their game for the next 7 or 8 years before they're ready to show something else, any of these major studios from Sony. So here's hoping September, and that's maybe why they're not going to Gamescom, because it doesn't necessarily line up with them having a show just a few weeks later. Next up, let's talk about Microsoft and some controversy that's hit the Xbox ecosystem. Go figure. Seems to happen a lot, although I guess with their most recent showcase, there was a lot of excitement and positivity around Xbox, and now just with one announcement, we had everything kind of not necessarily just like fall out from under it, but people start to go, okay, hold on, what's happening right now? Why is that Marvel vs. Capcom collection missing the Xbox? In fact, you can see this is posted up by IGN saying that no Xbox trends as fans hit out at Marvel vs. Capcom collection skipping Microsoft's consoles. I mentioned this kind of in passing yesterday, as it seemed like reports were kind of getting put out as to why this could be the case, and we now have that report from Windows Central. But yeah, a lot of pushback here, and well, look, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 was actually pretty big on the original Xbox. I played it there more than anywhere, believe it or not. That, I guess, in the Dreamcast technically, but when we went to the Xbox, PS2, GameCube generation, we had the Xbox version, myself and my friends, and that's where we would play it. So we had like there were fight sticks and everything involved with that whole thing. That was like the one big fighting game that I really got into and had a lot of fun with. And I will say, most of that was just unlocking all the different characters and outfits stuff. It was a really good time. Playing through the game, getting currency, going to the shop and buying the next new character, outfit, stuff, it was fun. Also, there are a lot of cool characters in there. But we can see this posted up over on Windows Central, saying, we just saw a suggestion from Joel Muncher on Twitter that Capcom's MT Framework engine is to blame for the recent spat of Xbox emissions. Our sources indicate that this is correct. Capcom has no pipeline for porting older MT Framework titles to Xbox's modern era system. This, of course, makes it pretty expensive in order to go in and say each one individually, okay, we're going to bring together so many people just to get this done and get it ported over. And I will say there's also, these companies are looking at how things sell on these different platforms. I don't think it's a secret that many people on the Xbox platform are used to Game Pass, subscribing to it, and that has caused just a la carte sales to decline overall. And it's kind of been mentioned. I've also heard stuff behind the scenes at times around this. And out of the 3 main platforms, yes, the Xbox is the least likely at this time to sell your third-party game on, like, in droves. So Capcom, they've done this before, seems like something that's going to be consistent until Microsoft maybe steps in and tries to help out on their end to set up some sort of pipeline or just work with them to get individual titles done as needed. This is one that I think they should step in for because it is a legendary release, and I think it's one that people are really going to spend a lot of time playing, and I think it really, for something like MVC2, where that entire campaign was being run, should be on as many platforms as possible. So we'll see if Microsoft maybe comes in, maybe can respond in some way, and even if it's a later port, at least get it ported to the platform. And in our last bit of news, Let's talk about more PS4 and Xbox One games as we head towards the end of 2024 into 2025. Who'd have thought? 12 years later, still talking about that Xbox One VCR. Well, we do know one game in particular is being backported to those systems. Yeah, it's already out on the Xbox Series and PS5, and that's Star Wars Jedi Survivor. And now we have a rating. We can see this is posted up over on X. This is from Andrew, who says Star Wars Jedi Survivor has been rated in Brazil for PlayStation 4 and Xbox One recently. So EA did mention earlier this year that they were porting these games to the Xbox One and the PS4, which sounded really weird, but we've seen the numbers from Sony now, so it does make a bit more sense when you hear this and you're like, well, yeah, half the monthly active users from Sony are also on the PS4 as opposed to just the PS5, so you would still have a large number of customers you could try to sell this thing to, and with that, I'm sure the Star Wars license attached to it, it's not cheap to make the game. If you can just find more customers anywhere, they're going to do that. Apparently the optimization that they had done throughout updates and stuff for the PS5 and the Xbox Series allowed them to get to a position where they could make this work on that PS4 and Xbox One. Still, though, it's very weird because we're still seeing games go to these platforms in 2025, could even go beyond that. This might be one of the longest generations we've ever seen, and that includes the PS2. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, which of these Nintendo 2024 games are you most excited for? I saw some people in the comments say, what about MVC2? Or these are like specifically Nintendo games. So we have Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, that got 57%. Then Mario and Luigi Brothership at 28%, then Super Mario Party Jamboree, Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, Nintendo World Championships NES Edition. This actually went just about exactly how I thought it would. I figured Echoes of Wisdom would be number one. It's the most unique title on this list, and it's a Legend of Zelda game where you finally get to just play as Zelda. We don't count those CDI games. No one should. But for something like this, I think that included twist of the wand that can then copy items or enemies and sort of use them as really just puzzles in the world. I mean, it's more a puzzle game than anything else. I think is very interesting just to see maybe what ideas the Zelda team could come up with, because I've seen the ideas they came up with in something like Tears of the Kingdom. And no, this is not as big as that, but it's such a different direction for the Zelda franchise. I think there's going to be some very, very fun and compelling puzzles that they're going to put forward here. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Fight Rudy Fight, who says, all of us old heads lost it when we saw that Ryu silhouette. Maximilian Dude had the best reaction to that re-release, definitely getting a physical Switch copy. Yeah, I'm sure he went through it on stream when that popped up. It was definitely kind of out of nowhere, too, with that silhouette, and I'll take you for a ride. That was a fun way to kind of introduce it. But yeah, I absolutely recommend getting a physical copy of this, and I'll tell you now, this might be one I would recommend getting physical copies for different systems, too, like multiple copies, because I've seen the MVC2 get delisted, right? And that was a big thing. And we've seen the value of these games spike tremendously, just in general, for original Xbox even. It's like, how many original Xbox games are that expensive? This is one of them. That and like Futurama. I think there's like two others. But this is one that, sure, could get delisted in the future at some point. So I would absolutely pick it up on Switch, PlayStation. I mean, those are two real. If it ever goes to Xbox, that's definitely one too, because that'll probably be more limited. It'd be a later port and getting it out there. There'll be a lot of logistics around how many do we print. So yes, I will tell you now, definitely one to pick up physically and maybe more than one just in case. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Was Metroid Prime 4 Beyond being mistaken as a Switch 2 game in that direct? What do you think that says about the future of retro when they do maybe show this game off on the Switch 2? Then also, what about Sony skipping Gamescom and Marvel vs. Capcom Collection skipping the Xbox? Are you someone who was frustrated not seeing that Xbox logo pop up at the end of the trailer? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.